Hey guys, wanted to show you some more information on the Oldsmobile issue I've got going on here. This is going to be an update video as well as kind of a quick little tutorial video on how to deal with this. But as you can see, the carb is taken apart again on the bench. I didn't want to have to do it, but hopefully this will actually work this time and I'll be able to drive the car. The issue I was having is that it would run terrible, it'd be boggy, it'd be stumbly, there was no... it was running very lean, it would backfire, it would just run like crap, but you'd unplug the mixture control solenoid and it would run like brand new, like it's supposed to. Well, you can't drive a car with the mixture control solenoid unhooked because it would cause problems with the computer and problems with emissions and all sorts of nonsense, so you gotta go in and fix it right. So what people are telling me is this mixture control solenoid is adjustable, which I already knew, by this mixture control solenoid stop screw. Nobody online has an actual spec on how to adjust that because it's all, it's very specific and it's picky and it depends on which way you put the screw in. There's always nonsense about it. I will try and put that information in the description so that people who don't want to deal with all this bullshit or don't have a caliper or anything like that can do it without using this tool. But if you look in your book, it'll show here this solenoid plunger contacting stop and gauging tool. And this gauging tool is this thing they're talking about right here. Gauging tool, metering jet, or gauging tool on top of the metering jet right there. It's this little black piece of plastic that measures at 1.304 inches. They don't make that tool anymore. As you can see, it's tool J28696-10. They don't make that anymore. You can't buy it anymore. I'm not going to go on eBay and order it because I figured out that if I just take a straw of similar width and cut it to 1.304 using my caliper here and the McDonald's straw that I had, that I could just make that tool without having to go and buy one or try and find one. So what you're supposed to do with that is you're supposed to take that straw, take your, whatever the hell that plate is called off, take your straw and stick it over one of these metering rods. It doesn't matter which one, it just goes over one of them. And you want to make sure that it bottomed out down there on the bottom of the metering rod. And then you want to take your top thing here and stick it back down in the hole and push this down until it bottoms out on your solenoid, end of the solenoid here. This one, as you can see, bottoms out on the straw before it bottoms out on the solenoid. That's bad, because the way you want to do this is you want to adjust this so when you bottom this thing out here on the solenoid, it barely touches the top of that straw. Like we're talking, you could probably fit 1/1000th of an inch flat feeler gauge in between the straw and the blocker plate here, whatever you want to call it. And this one is very clearly not adjusted right. I don't want to say it's my fault because I adjusted this to the same spec that the original, or that the reman carb was. When I took it apart, I counted the turns out and I put it back in at that spec. And that reman carb never functioned correctly either. So now we're going to do it right by taking out that straw and loosening this thing up because it's way too lean right now. Basically, the higher this solenoid sits, the more stroke you have on your metering rods and the more fuel you can get into the idle circuit while it's running. And since this is adjusted way too far down, there is not enough fuel going into the idle circuit, and it's not allowing it to have a full cycle, and you're cutting off your fuel mixture essentially. When you unplug this, all it's doing is lifting these metering rods all the way up and out of the bore and flooding the shit out of the carb, and that's how it's able to run off idle without this solenoid being plugged in. But that's not going to do very well for your running it while you're driving or shifting and all that sort of stuff. It's just going to be constantly pouring gas into the carb, and your fuel economy is going to be running like crap. You're going to ruin your catalytic converter. A whole bunch of nonsense is going to happen. So what I'm going to do now is exactly what I just said. I'm going to take that straw out and I'm going to back this off until the top of my plunger thing here barely touches the end of the straw. And once you do that, like I said, I'll put in the description down below how many turns out from bottom dead center that actually is, so people know, because I don't like, I was trying so hard to find information on how many turns it was from bottom dead center, and that's lightly seated. That's not forcefully seated. That's just until it stops turning. You don't need to crank it. You don't need to do anything like that. Just turn it until it stops. That's it. And then you back it out how many turns, and that's how many turns it's going to be to spec. Once again, it is kind of varying, so I'll put, like I said, I'll put it in the description. And you can do it that way if you want, but really the way that you're supposed to do it is with the straw and the calipers. So I would do it that way if I were you. So yeah, after you get that set up, there's two other things that you need to adjust, and those are your idle mixture needles, which are these things down here, and your idle air bleed, which is how much this magnet here, which pulls the solenoid up in the bore and allows fuel to come in, how much that's adjusted to. And this is entirely dependent on dwell. You are supposed to back this off at 4 turns and go from there and hook up a dwell meter, set it to the 6-cylinder scale, and it's supposed to read at 30 degrees dwell on the 6-cylinder scale. So you just adjust that based off of that. But that will only work if your mixture control solenoid is adjusted right, and your idle mixture needles are adjusted right. So the spec at which the needles are supposed to be set to is 3 turns and about just under 3.5 turns each. They have to be both exact, 3.5 turns each. So technically it's 3 3/8 turns each, but that tiny little bit of difference isn't going to make a difference, if you know what I mean. So you set those to that, you set this to touch the straw, and then once you get everything back together and the car is running, you back your idle air bleed off 4 turns from dead center, bottom dead center, and back it off 4 turns, and watch your dwell meter and watch for that 30-degree mark at around 800 RPMs in park or 600 RPMs in gear. Back it off or screw it back in order to get the proper dwell rating and the proper RPMs out of it. So that's how you do that. I will let you know how it goes in the description, because I'm not going to record a long video like that. But that's basically the gist of how you're supposed to set up these carbs. So I'll see you then. See you in the next one.